Hey there folks, this is Raleigh Cosplay and this is the second video in our Blender tutorial. In the first video we started to talk about how to get into Blender and the basic functions of Blender, and this is going to be our first full workflow that will allow us to take those tools and actually start making models out of them. And this is going to leverage that Boolean modifier that we spent some time talking about in the previous video. For this workflow, you're going to be taking existing meshes, whether those are very basic meshes like cubes and cylinders and cones, or more complicated meshes that you have imported as objects, and then you're going to use Boolean to stick them together, to cut them apart, sometimes adding holes in the shape of other meshes to end up with the model that you actually want. Now, of course, for this to work, you need to have some initial sources. And you can certainly use the basic geometry of cylinders and circles and cubes that exist already in Blender, as we talked about last time. But oftentimes you're going to want to import existing sources and then Boolean modify them to end up with the thing that you actually want. So where would you look for those existing models? Well, there's plenty of free places to look. Thingiverse is a great place to go through. More advanced models can be found at Cults 3D. People who really care about modeling often go there. If there's something very specific that you're looking for, you can often purchase those on Etsy. And what you're looking for in all these cases is an STL file. You can occasionally get away with an object file and convert it to an STL, but STL is what you're really going to be working with here. Note that we're getting these models for 3D printing, and not every model that you get is going to be optimized for 3D printing. So frequently you're going to find a model on Thingiverse, you're going to import it, and then you're going to need to do some fixes to that model in addition to the modifications using the Boolean. So just understand that when you get a model in, it may be a model that's really for rendering or for animation, and that it may do some very strange things once you start actually trying to make it work for 3D printing. So just accept that that's sort of part of the process, and we'll talk about how to address that as we go through the workflow. The other thing you're going to want to do, of course, is be aware of the permissions of these models. Most things from Thingiverse, for example, thingiverse.com, have an open source license or a Creative Commons license, which means that you can download them for free. Sometimes you could throw some money toward the creator. They've certainly deserved that. And that they're fine for private personal use. So you download them, you modify them, you print them, and then you have that prop, and it's just a prop that you use. Great, covered by the Creative Commons license. If you start selling things, then that becomes much more difficult, and you probably want to reach out to the initial artist and find out, what are their licensing options for that kind of stuff. But this is for individual cosplayers, and so that license will cover that personal use of taking an object, modifying it, printing it for your own props. If you are competing, if you are a competitive cosplayer, make sure that you cite your sources whenever you do. This should go into your build book. So if, for example, you are using 3 different sources, 3 different models, make sure that those models are listed and the artists with those are listed in your build book. And then you can talk in your build book about how you use the Boolean technique to modify those things. That's also worth points in the judging process. But you want to make sure that anything that you did import is properly documented in your build book. Now, that's, of course, if you are a competitive cosplayer. If you're not, that's not a necessary thing. But you just want to give the artists their due, as any reasonable person would. I just hit my my cord here. So what does this workflow look like? We're going to go over this, and then I'm going to show you it in the software. First, you're going to separate it out by parts. This is just a process when you ingest a object. Not all the parts may actually be stuck together properly as a real object. So you're going to want to separate things by parts so you know the objects you're really working with. Then you're going to be using Boolean to join together parts, and you're also going to be using Boolean in a slightly different way to cut apart other parts. So you're going to end up with many different objects that you can stick together, cut apart till you get what you want. As part of this workflow, we're also going to be talking about the tongue and groove method of fixing 2 objects together. when you 3D print an object, that object has to be printed within the base of the 3D printer, which is usually about a 9-inch cube. And if you're making a very large object or a strangely shaped object, that object may not fit in a 9-inch cube. So you're going to have some division of that object into sub-objects that can each be printed and then affixed together. I'm told by people who are really into this that some of the slicers can now do that slicing for you and figure out complicated things like dovetails. You can just have the object, put it into the slicer, and the slicer will figure out how to do all those sort of things. But I'm old-fashioned, and so I tend to do that in Blender. And we'll talk about the method for that, how you can slice objects and add tongue and groove to those objects, which is that same Boolean process, so you can easily fit them together and make them secure when they are printed. So that's what we'll be going over in this section of the tutorial.
So, to get started with this workflow, you're going to start a new general file. You'll get rid of this camera. You'll get rid of this light source. We're going to leave the cube for just a moment. We'll set our units to centimeters, because that's what we'll be printing in. And then, as with all these, you're going to be importing sources. So let's import a source here. Again, it's import STL. There's also this STL experimental. Don't touch that. You don't want it to be haunted. Import STL. Go to where your files are. Just grab this hook that I got from Thingiverse. And oh my, it's very large. And you're going to see very frequently the objects that you import will have had a different sort of native size. So you're going to have to scale them to what's appropriate for what you're building. You can use the properties here to do that. It's a little bit easier, I think, to use this little one because you can see, oh my, 2,540 centimeters. That's rather large, isn't it? We could use it at 100th of that. So let's scale it down, 0.01 in that direction and 0.01 in that direction and 0.01 in that direction. And now we're dealing with something that is properly 25 centimeters. That seems a little bit more reasonable and rational now that we have that. And again, you could do the scaling in your printer, but just so you have everything scaled properly, I'm going to go ahead and apply those transforms now that I've made them. So that is apply all transforms. There we go. So now that is the thing itself. Now let's say that we want to Boolean together this object. So let's have let's Control-C, Control-V to duplicate it. And now we've got two of these. And notice there's these weird lines wherever they overlap. That's very useful because that tells you, hey, there's two objects here. Now we're going to be Boolean them together so there only is one object, but that's just useful to know where that intersection is taking place right now. Again, so you get these aligned. If they were misaligned, you could use object, transform, align objects, as we talked about in the last video. But let's say that we have them where we want them. And again, as we talked about before, we're going to come to modifiers, Boolean. We're going to select this hook as our main piece. We're going to say the union, wherever that exists, and this other one exists, this second hook, that's going to be our piece. I'm actually going to rename these real quick as hook 1 and hook 2. It may seem a small detail, but when it gets complicated, having these labels is useful. So we come to hook 1, we see we now have this modifier. And if we hide hook 2, we see, okay, that's pretty much what we want, two of them together. If we unhide hook 2, oh, there's those lines of intersection everywhere because they're both existing in the same space. We haven't applied this union yet. It's just a rule saying, hey, hook 1, wherever hook 2 is, we want that to be added to you. So if we were to, for example, come into edit mode, we'd see, oh, it's not there at all. It's just a rule at the moment. So we need to apply that. So here we are, hook 1, there's our modifier. We're going to apply. And now we could move hook 2 out of the way and see there is our double hook. So that's how you Boolean things together. It's a little bit more complicated to talk about how we Boolean them apart. And there's a couple ways to do this. Let's say that we wanted to slice off just this sort of curve, this middle curve there. Well, what we would do is we would start with a mesh. I like to use a cube. And we scale that mesh to be basically the size of what it is we want to slice. So I'm just going to do some rough scaling here, 0.1 and 0.1. You could do this with handles, of course. I like to do it this way. And we're going to line it up with the part we want to slice away. I'll select those, object, transform, align objects, get it nice and aligned in that axis. Good. And let's see, nope. We want to get just that curve. And it's fine to make your knife basically bigger. So let's scale it. Let's say it is 40 centimeters, twice as wide in the x-axis. Let's see about that. That's fine. And it's, let's say, 60 in the z-axis. And that neatly slices off our whole piece there. Get it lined up so we don't see any of that curve at the bottom. It needs to be a little bit wider because you can see it's poking through the back. So within the y-axis, I love that it's color-coded. There we go. Now our knife covers everything that we want to get rid of. I'm going to duplicate this. Control-Z, Control-V. You can also Control-D, I think, for duplicate rather than cutting and pasting, but both of them work because we're going to use this for the second Boolean. So the first thing we're going to do is cut away. We're going to make this cube here into that curve. And we're going to use the Boolean again to do this with the intersect ability. We're going to say we want this cube to no longer be a cube, but only where both the cube and the curve exist. And now we see we have this new object that is just that curve. We're going to go ahead and apply that, move it out of the way, and now we have just that curve. Now we're going to take this same cube, we're going to move it right on over, and we're just going to now completely get rid of that curve. So now we'll say difference. We're going to choose our hook. We're going to say the hook only exists now where there is not our knife cube. And we'll go ahead and hide our knife cube. Is that? Yeah, and we'll see it's nicely sliced away. And so we can apply. And then we can actually get rid of our knife cube here. And so we have now, we've sliced off this object. And it's separate. So if you wanted to print it in a different material or have something else, you would now have this as a separate object. So that is one way to slice. Now, another possibility, rather than taking a full piece off like that, is if you want to just cut a single piece in half. For that, you're going to need to introduce a knife, basically, to cut. And I'm going to start again with just a regular old cube. You could use a plane for this, but you need to give it some solidity. And we're going to make it much smaller than this. Let's say it's 30 wide, and it's only 0.1 centimeter deep, and we're going to say that it is 30 high as well. We might even make it a little bit thinner than that. Well, let's choose it just for, that's fine for the moment. This is going to be our knife, and let's say that we just want to cut this top portion away. Let's get these aligned. Again, object, transform, align objects, and there we go, neatly aligned. And then with the Boolean, again, we're going to say wherever the knife is, let's actually name it knife. We want to take that away and make a little gap, basically, in our piece. So we've selected our hook. We're going to choose Boolean. We're going to say difference. We're going to choose the knife. You can use it from this drop down here as well. And now if we were to come in here and zoom on over here and to hide our knife, we would see there, oh, look, there's a gap. There's a tiny little gap that we have introduced. And that's exactly what you want. So we will now apply. And then we can take our knife and move it out of the way, or get rid of it entirely if we wanted to. But the thing is, this is still treated as one object. So now we have to do a thing called separate by parts. So you're going to come in here to edit mode. And now you see that they're all selected, but if they weren't all selected, you could hit the letter A to select them all. Right click, separate, and separate by loose parts. And now we see, oh, now we have two different objects. We have this object and we have that object. We can leave edit mode and see, now we can move them separately. Do note that the origin, where the handles is, of this piece is where it was originally. Same thing here. So this is where you want to right-click, set origin to geometry, and then your handles are in a proper relationship. So that is how you can use the knife to slice things. And of course, you could make a fairly elaborate knife by making a plane that snakes through various shapes, give it some solidity, and have all kinds of crazy curves. The last thing I want to make mention of is how to use this Boolean technique to create a tongue and groove. So if you print these things separately, they will fit together neatly. The last thing you want to do is try to just use adhesive on these two flat surfaces because they will absolutely come apart. They will shear against one another. No glue can hold up to that. So just for clarity, let me get rid of these pieces. Let me align these into the configuration we want them to be. There we go. And now here's how we're going to do this. We're going to introduce another cube, mesh, cube. Oh, you're very large, sir. We're just going to say you're 10, and you're 10, and you're 10. Probably is still bigger than what we need. And we're just going to hide this bit here. And we're going to first make this cube into our tongue, our part that's going to stick out from the other. Let's actually use this to make sure we're properly aligned. We're going to scale down our cube. I'll just do it manually this time. We want it to be rather less wide than our surface. And we want it to be almost the same, close to the same length. That looks good. It doesn't need to stick out nearly that much, so we can make it more like that. And then we can move it over, get it so it's intersecting. You can see it intersect, and let's get it aligned properly. Here and here, align objects. Except we wanted to, sorry, we didn't want to move the big one. We wanted to move the small one. So select the small one, then select the big one. Object, transform, align objects, and then the one you first clicked will move. And that can be important because we don't want it to move out of relationship with that piece there. So good. This is actually probably sticking out a little bit more than we need it to. So let's just scale him down a little bit there. That's probably good. And then we'll move him to make sure he does still intersect with the curve. That's good without poking out the other side. Great. So first, we're going to Boolean together this piece in our cube. So grab that, Boolean, and we're going to say yes. We're going to union with our cube. We'll go ahead and apply that. And then we can move our cube out of the way. Yep, and that looks good. Actually, delete our cube. And there we go. Now, let's unhide this part. And we're going to say, hey, wherever that tongue is sticking out into it, we want to take that away from this part. So we've chosen our hook. And we'll apply the modifier of Boolean and difference from our other object. And now if we hide our other hook, we see, yep, there is a hole exactly aligned with that. And so we can now apply that here as well. The one thing I will say is if you print them out this way, you're going to have a heck of a time fitting together because there are tolerances. So what you always want to do with a tongue and groove is come here to select our object, come into edit mode, choose faces, and choose this front face. And we're going to just scale down this front face in both of these dimensions, just this little bit. And that way, even given your tolerances, it's going to nicely fit into your groove. That's probably scaled a little bit more than it needs to be on the sides. There we go. And that is tongue and groove using the Boolean. So we've talked about Booleaning things together. taking them apart both with the cube method as well as with the knife method, and also adding tongue and groove. So I think that covers pretty much everything for this workflow.
So that is the basic workflow for using Boolean. As a quick practical example, this is my model of the list, Percy de Rolo's pepperbox from Critical Role. It's based on an 1872 La Faucheux pepperbox. All this sort of detailing here comes from a model that I found of the La Faucheux. But the La Faucheux is almost like a Derringer. It's a tiny little thing. So first, of course, it had to be extended. I had to Boolean out the trigger, which is sort of a lever trigger, and find another model with a traditional trigger, Boolean out that trigger, fix it here. And then all of the text that you see here, all the names, these are just words, because a word is just a mesh, right? Letters can be added in Boolean as a mesh. You add solidify to give them some depth, and then you just Boolean out those letters, and so you can see through to where the LEDs are inside. And so this is just using that same workflow. You can also hear this wood inlay. This was just Booleaning out a slice with a cube and a circle, and then putting in a Boolean space using that tongue and groove method for the magnets. And then that just holds on with magnets that way. And you can sort of see this engraving as well of the de Rolo crest. Can I sort of, yeah, there we go. And that again is just an SVG that was designed in Inkscape, imported. That SVG is just a mesh again, so I could then solidify it, Boolean it out, and then we get this wonderful, wonderful carving that we get there. So that's how the Boolean method could be used to take a couple of base models and turn them into this rather particular model. So that's this workflow. Next up, let me bring up my slide here. We'll go over a separate workflow. This is another, maybe more flexible workflow. I don't use it as frequently as the Boolean workflow, but it is very flexible. And then I'm realizing I probably need a fourth video in this series to cover advanced concepts such as subdivision surface modifier, such as applying UV textures. So rather than trying to squeeze all of those into our existing material, I'll add a fourth video to cover those sort of concepts. In any case, if this is useful to you, I'm supposed to tell you to like and comment and subscribe. Please only do that if it does seem useful, and have great fun with your modeling.